we're good.
Okay. Welcome everyone. This is our third session of the Indicator 14 series. I'm Shelly Leem and I am the Northern TIG Coordinator. I primarily work with CESAs 8, 9, and 12. We have Jenny Jacobs, who you all know as our statewide Indicator 14 guru and our Eastern Region TIG Coordinator. If you could just take a few minutes and just make sure that your name on your screen, if you need to rename yourself, we like to have the first and last name. There's the 3 dots on your little picture there that you can go under and rename. It's just helpful for other people to share information if you want to connect with somebody as we share out, and just for kind of some attendance purposes for us as well. So we appreciate that. You're welcome to, if you want to drop in the chat where you're from. It's always fun to see where everybody's zooming in from. I'm also going to drop in the chat a copy of the presentation, so you have that as well to follow along.
See all the places popping in. All right, so we're going to dive right in. So let's start talking about the timelines for the 2021 survey. And like I said, almost the majority of you are either directors or you've been interviewers, or maybe you're thinking of being an interviewer upcoming. In the past years, I've always emailed the special ed director or director of pupil services. I'm just going to keep saying special ed director, because if you don't have a special ed director, it's the pupil services person that I would email, or your district administrator. Whoever is listed on DPI's website as the person in charge of special ed is the person that will get the email, unless I've heard something different from a district. Normally, I would send an email out early in January with links for districts to go in and tell me whether or not they're going to participate in the upcoming survey. So I've had some districts reach out and say, hey, where's my email? Well, we've had a little bit of a delay because I didn't know who were going to be the required districts for the 2021 survey up until about a few days ago. So now I know I have that list. The issue I've been having is if when I send that email out in January, people forget if they signed up for the survey or if they're required or elective when we actually start talking about doing the work in April and May, prepping for the survey. So at this point, I'm planning on waiting until mid-March. Actually, once, fingers crossed, our exeter list will be uploaded by then, and send out one email with all the pieces in at one time. So I'm hoping it's going to streamline the process this year and do it more in a Google form instead of links on the website. So fingers crossed that this is going to work out well. Districts will have to figure out if you're going to, first, I highly encourage everybody to participate. Great data. It's data you can use for a multitude of purposes, but to see what's happening with your transition programming. Also, this is a year of the upcoming new state budget, and it's a biennial state budget, so this budget will cover the next 2 years. We're waiting to hear whether or not the special ed transition incentive grant funding that allocation will be in there. We're assuming it's going to be. We haven't heard otherwise, but until the budget is actually fully approved and in place, I don't have the answer to that question. So this happens every other year. A little frustrating, but it is what it is. Districts who are in a required year are still going to have the option of using St. Norbert Strategic Research Institute as the interviewer if they so choose at no cost. If you are in an elective year, you have the option of having your own staff do the interviews, or you'd have to pay St. Norbert College to do the calls on behalf of your district. I really looked at the data this last year. It's a better option to have your own staff do it whenever possible. So all those pieces will be coming out soon, because at this point I have to look at my list to tell you if you're required or not. So once districts sign up for the survey, I will reach out to interviewers because I will have all of your emails near the end of April or beginning of May. And I'm going to do something a little bit different with interviewer training this year. A lot of you are formerly trained interviewers. I always like to do a touch base with you just to say, hey, this is what I saw last year that we need to keep a watch for. We fixed a lot of things from last year's survey from the year before, which was great. The good news is I won't be changing any of the questions. So that should make all of us happy. But I do want to have that contact with you to make sure that we're all on the same page. If your district has brand new interviewers, you do need to have them go through interviewer training. Normally, I would hold about 5 different Zoom sessions near the end of May and beginning of June that people had to log in and participate in. With the way things have gone and how much Zoom time everybody has, I'm going to do this as more of a self-paced class this year. I'm going to build it into the TIG website. So once I have that all worked out, people will just need to go in, watch the videos, answer the questions, and it's somehow going to record when you've completed it so that I know I can turn on your rights to be an interviewer for the surveys. So I'm hoping that that's a nicer process so you don't have to try to add another event to your calendar. I think I covered everything on there. The surveys do start June 1st, so I really do want to have everybody trained and ready to roll on by June 1st.
We do have a question, Jenny, that just came in.
Yeah.
Could you use a completion certificate?
That's the question?
Yeah. If you want, do you want to just take yourself off mute? And
yeah. I think I need more detail.
What I was looking at is you were talking about a way to know if we completed things, the training that you are going to be emailing out. That's what I was talking about.
Yes, that's my hope, is that either it's going to, ideally, I would just like us to send me a Google form, like your email goes to my Google form and says you're finished on this date. Or if it's a completion certificate, most likely then you'd have to probably take a picture of it and email it to me or something along those lines. I really am trying to make this as user-friendly on both of our ends. I just want to know that you've gotten the updates. Plus, then I'm hoping I can have all of my documents right there for you too, so that it's not a second email that you receive from me to say, hey, I'm glad you completed interviewer training. Here's the documents and the email saying I know you finished. Because last year I had about 350 interviewers. I adore all of you, but sometimes it's a challenge to keep everything straight over summer. So I'm just trying to figure out how it can work easier on both of our ends. But thank you for that. When you said that, I'm like, wasn't thinking the Exeter list versus the class.
Okay, so as Jenny talked about, you do have some decisions and choices to make on how you're going to do the survey, whether you have your district make the survey and the phone calls and you hire staff within, or you can go with St. Norbert. So both of them have pros and cons, obviously. You know, if you have St. Norbert do the calls for you, you know it's going to get done. They are going to put in an effort to get a hold of everyone. And they do try to have their surveys and calls done by September 15th. So then that gives you as a director a little bit of time to kind of look things over and see if there was any questions or anything more that you could follow up on. But when you do the survey yourself, you're within your district, there's a lot of pros with that as well. Families and students are more apt to answer the phone if they see a number that they recognize. It might be a name that they recognize, or just even getting a call from a local area. I know often people won't answer their phone. I mean, we're all like that if we're not really unsure of the number coming in. The other piece that really comes into place with students, as I'm sure you can all attest to, is that their numbers change quite frequently. So the number that you may have for St. Norbert may not be working any longer. And if you're doing the calls for the district yourself and you stumble across a student that their contacts are not working, you have a lot of other strategies that you could use. I used to do the calls for the district that I had worked in, and I really relied on my department and my staff to be able to just reach out to them and say, I'm looking for Johnny. I see him around town, but I don't have a number. Does anybody know where he's working? Or, you can dig in a little bit more into trying to locate them. You can use social media. Often that's a place that you can get a hold of people. One time while I was doing surveys, I knew a young man was in the area and I just could not track him down. And I happened to be dropping my son off at baseball practice and saw this young man sitting outside in front of a house. So I dropped my son off and quickly turned around and went back and had a fantastic conversation with this person who was able to complete the survey in person. However, that does not mean that you have to be an undercover detective to try and track down these students. So really, it's kind of up to you and what your comfort level is. I always thoroughly enjoyed doing the surveys for the district just because selfishly, it gave me as a teacher a lot of feedback as to how students were doing. I loved hearing their success stories. And then if they were hitting some bumps in the road, maybe you can kind of help redirect them and reconnect them with some outside agencies and get them back on the right path. So there's pros and cons to both of it. I guess just know, the other piece is that your family's best too. So if there's a student or a family that you may need to make some accommodations with, you might be more aware of what best way their learning style is so that you can make sure to offer the survey in a way that works for them. In really any way, either one you could do is just fine with us. In some years it might work for you to do your own surveys and sometimes it just doesn't. But just do know that on an average, there's a 20% higher response rate when the district staff conduct the surveys themselves.
So mid-March, we've got this process started. Once DPI releases that database of exiters from the 2019-2020 school year, remember it's exiters, so it's your graduates, your aged outs, your dropouts from that year, and it's uploaded into our Indicator 14 website. Then you can begin that process of verifying your exiter list. I've had a few PSTs who've already contacted me and said, I really want my list. I'm like, I don't have your list. They're like, well, can we go off of our list and start putting things together? So they've actually started pulling the parent names and some of those phone numbers together already so that they're really ready to roll right when that database comes in. Usually, cross our fingers, the list is very accurate, way more accurate now with our WISE-Dash data versus when we were using the ISIS report. A lot of times if we find errors, it's students who may have, maybe their class exited last year during the 18-19 or 19-20 or in 21, but they returned for like an 18 to 21-year-old program, and all of a sudden you see them on your exiter list and they're still in school, so they don't qualify for the survey. I have to say it's pretty easy to pull students off the list. A little bit more information is needed when we have to add students, but it's very doable. All districts are asked to make sure that the list is accurate before June 1st, before the survey window opens. So DPI only releases the names and the demographics of the exiters. They don't have all this other information. The parent, the guardian, the relationship to student, if there's any specific calling information. So that information truly does need to be gathered by your district. Personally, since I have you all on here, I'm going to say I really appreciate it when your district puts that information directly into the website. Some districts, now if you are, well, I can't even say that. Milwaukee's our biggest district. They enter it all themselves. Each building has a person responsible for that building. Some districts like to put everything into a spreadsheet and send it to me. One, there's always that issue of how are you going to get it to me so that it's secure? I don't want to have student information. We always got to be careful of that because it's got to come through some channel to get to me. But it's really a data entry piece. It's taking some time to type this into the website. If the names are there mid-March, you have from mid-March until June 1st to get that in. And sometimes it's super helpful to have that information that you can put in the calling info spot of like, and I know students working third shift, please call, around the lunch hour to try to get a hold of him or those kinds of things. That's super helpful to whoever's making those phone calls.
Jenny, we had a question come in, and this is a fantastic thought. we collect student phone numbers and emails on our PTPs now, can that info be loaded into the student contact information yet?
That's my next slide. You know, of course, it'd be lovely if all of our systems talk to each other. That is truly the goal someday. And I'm thinking maybe 3 years down the road, we'll be to that point. We're not there yet. So definitely, so this is my fake copy off of the PTP website. So if you're a district super user or a director, you're able to pull this PTP report of contact information. It's called the Exiting Student Contacts Report. You can download it. Now, interestingly, it pulls from the demo site when I was playing around, or from what I could look at, it pulled even students that didn't have this information on it. So you'd have to do some sorting and playing around with Excel. But the bonuses is Excel to a database. You can always go over and do I can't because this is a Google slide, but you can highlight, right click and do a copy and paste it over into the fields on the Indicator 14 website. I will tell you, that's probably where my biggest errors that I get for myself is typing in people's emails. Don't do so bad on phone numbers, but boy, emails, you switch one letter and you've got things that aren't going to go correctly. So definitely use this and make sure that you have access to it, because that's been the bonus of you putting that information in the last few years. And then whatever your student data management system hopefully has been capturing pretty solid information also.
Okay, so selecting the interviewers, there's some things that have to go into that, some things that you'll have to consider and think about. For one, importantly, how are you going to pay your interviewers? How are you going to compensate them for their time? You know, it can be done a number of different ways. Some choose to do like an hourly wage and have the interviewers fill out like a time card or whatever your district would use to keep track of that. Others have, you know, given a certain amount per successful survey. You know, whether they successful in their eyes is that they completed it, were able to make contact. So that would be something that you would have to determine. There's people that have used completed work and maybe it equivalates out to a personal day. So there's different things. You know, there was another district too that I had heard of that gave a stipend, like a lump sum stipend for the whole interview. So those are things that you would have to discuss, and then of course work with your district administration as to what in your policies that would be best. So a couple of things to think about with that. But let's talk now about interviewers and how many. Overall, we generally feel that fewer interviewers is better. We do understand some of your districts are quite large and you have a number of surveys to make. And so that you may have a few different interviewers that will be working together. I guess then some things to keep in mind if you do have more than one interviewer is really think about the dynamics of the staff that you're choosing to work together. Do they kind of have similar mindset, work ethic? You know, sometimes it can get tough, especially if you have a couple different people doing the interviewers or the surveys for your district. And let's say you have one that starts right away in June, but the other doesn't start making calls until September. That can be a little stressful. And again, it's kind of, you know, what you lay out to the foundation of it, because really the intent is to start the interviews in June. And you want to be mindful in what you corresponded to the families that, you know, you're telling them that you're going to be contacting them over the summer. So that's when it should happen. You certainly don't want your surveys to wait till the last minute, because you just may not be able to have as many attempts. And we all know how crazy September is. So you're most likely not going to have the time to put in during the day to make calls. And sometimes that's maybe what a time of the day that works best. So generally fewer we feel is better, but if you do have to pick a few to do work on it, and, you know, just kind of keep in mind the how well they work together. And then just in general too, the surveys that are started in June have a much higher response rate for kind of all the obvious reasons that we just went through. But put some thought into all of this, and we're here to bounce ideas off of too if you have any questions on that.
The rule is they have to be completed by September 30th. But districts that start in June and finish by the end of June or by the end of July have always had a significantly higher response rate. So this was a quote. I have a little calendar with quotes on it, and I saw this, and it just kind of resonated with this whole idea of there are two kinds of people, those who do the work and those who take the credit. Try to be in the first group. There is less competition there. The majority of you, it's just great to see all your names because overall, you guys are all the awesome interviewers that I have, which is great. And I know life happens. There's things that come up that we've got to work around. And I tell people this during interviewer training. We start out the surveys June 1st. I pretty much leave you alone. I give like updates, that kind of thing, up until about that second week in August. And then you start getting emails from me weekly of like, hey, this is how many districts I have left. This is how many interviews that still need to be finished. And then your stress level goes up, mine goes up. If I still don't see anything happening, then I'm emailing your special ed director or the coordinator who's in charge of the survey. And it's not a pleasant experience on any of our parts at that point. On the flip side, if you've got surveys that are still open, but I see that they're on you've made the 4th attempt and you're just keeping them open because you're hoping they're going to call back, I leave you alone because I don't have concerns. I have concerns when your district has 35 surveys to get done and they aren't started and it's August 22nd. And this is for people who've interviewed, you know this. If you close out a survey early because you made your 5 attempts and that student calls you back or the parent calls you back, I will gladly reopen that survey. It's a super quick process on my end. And the other piece, so if your district has, let's say, 4 interviewers, 3 people have finished and they're completely done, I can't close out your district until that 4th person finishes. So then you're still on my email list because I literally cut and paste emails off of a spreadsheet into the emails. And if you're still open and not highlighted, you're still going to get the emails. And I know that frustrates people because they're like, I finished. And I'm like, but your district isn't done. You got to have everybody closed out. So just something to think about. I'm a pretty happy person June 1st through about, like I said, mid-August. And then the stress level starts. Now, depending, I'm assuming school could be back in person, hopefully totally this year. That could be even a little bit more stressful depending on how things, I don't know. I just finish early. That would be awesome. So again, new interviewers are going to need to plan to have about 90 minutes, probably a little less than that, but that would be the top end to complete the self-paced interviewer training. Previously trained interviewers should allot about maybe 30 minutes for the refresher training. It won't be any more than that. I'm going to hold 2 question and answer sessions with Shelley, one on May 18th and the other on May 26th from 3:30 to 4 to answer any questions interviewers may have on the survey process. Nobody's going to be required or mandated to attend those sessions. We're just going to open it up so that if people have general questions that they want to have out there for anybody else to hear, we'll have those available. And I'm always willing, any phone call, email, any other time is welcome too. But just want to know that those will be available.
Okay, we're going to take a couple minutes to just talk over the 2020 survey timeline. So June through September, the surveys were completed. And then in December, the funding was finalized and accepted. So everybody had to accept their funding by January 31st. And then between, you get the payout in June of 2021, but however, between when you accept and then you get that payout, you have to earmark the funds for the incentive payment. Then the budget balances when payment is made towards the end of the fiscal year. Just keep in mind, if the money's not earmarked or spent prior to the end of your fiscal year, then the funds are absorbed into the district's general fund. So districts can allocate money from the transition incentive grant funding to cover the cost of paying for interviewers and the survey work too.
So this last year, everybody received the full $1,000 per qualifying survey. So think about $1,000 if you divvy that out by, if you paid your teachers $20 or $25 per completed survey, or even at hourly, one survey qualifying covers a lot of work for the survey process itself. So just remind, if you're the interviewer, remind your special ed director of that. If you're the special ed director, think about, maybe we can earmark a little bit of that funding to cover this process. Because for the districts that are doing that, it really seems to be working well.
Okay, so really the work that you put in to before you do the survey is honestly just as important as during the time that you're doing the surveys, because the more that you can prepare the families and students for the phone calls and the surveys, the more successful you're going to be for sure. Here's just a couple of different examples of ways that districts are preparing and letting families know about the survey. The graduation IEP, that's a perfect time to, if you especially, well, I guess this year we're not really in face, but when you can have them face to face, talk over that survey and explain it, and just let them know that they'll be getting a call, make sure that their contact information is up to date. You can also put a note or a letter in their progress reports or that are sent home. We did have a really good idea of doing the robo-dial from a school. If you do have the contacts, you could set that up to go out, and they may be more apt to answer that call from the school, just kind of letting them know and prepare. You can send a letter home via snail mail. There is sample letters on the Indicator 14 website that the districts can pull and use. They're really there kind of as a format. For sure, take those if you're going to use them and put them on your district letterhead, and personalize them to your district so that they know who they're, a little bit more personable and individualized to where they're going. You can make some personal calls ahead of time. Again, we talked about social media and a website. If your district has different platforms, sometimes Facebook, it seems like that's the way to get a hold of a lot of parents or, even students. So if you're comfortable doing that, that's a perfect way. At parent transition nights, or if you get parents in for even conferences, we do have a video that is really, I love this video. We're going to share it with you next. But just before I go to that page, is there anybody that has a creative way or that they have used it within your district that you'd like to share with anyone? You feel free to put it in the chat or can unmute.
Right, we're a small enough group, you can unmute. And of course, I've got to stop share because I didn't share audio the way I was supposed to. So Amanda, I hope I answered your question. Like I said, I don't have the same access rights as other people as a director or a super user. So the dates that you suggested would make the most sense. So hopefully when you run the report, it'll pull up the students that are the same students that show up on your Exeter list.
Okay, well, if you have any ideas, feel free to share. We'll have time at the end too. So we're just going to show you a video that was created, and feel free to use it. I love this video, so it's just 3 minutes long. We're going to share that with you right now.
We'll have you all singing it by the time we're done.
What's up, Wisconsin students and recent graduates? My name is Jer One, representing the Figureheads crew, and we've got a little story about something coming your way soon. If you're still in high school or you graduated, here's an early or late congratulations. It's an exciting new world out there. You may feel ready or a little bit scared, but don't worry too much and just stay in touch with the people that have helped you as you were coming up. And a year after graduation, when you get a letter telling you about a survey, it's not a setup. It's that your crew from school wants to know how you're doing. So when you get a call or email, don't refuse it. It's a way to give props to your teachers for all the help they gave you, so speak up. Plus you'll be helping make a way for the next crew. A simple way to give back, a small thing to do. So give them 10 minutes, tell them where you're living, where you're working, or what college you're attending. And when it's finished, know you play your part to help students like you make a new start. And yourself as well, cause everybody's got a story to tell.
First comes a letter, check your email. Pick up the phone, you got a story to tell.
Looking for the
up the phone, gotta let them know what's going on. First comes a letter, check your email. Pick up the phone, you got a story to tell. Pick up the phone, gotta let them know what's going on.
Hi, my name is Sadie Humphrey. I graduated from Milton High School in the spring of 2011. This is my second semester at Black Hawk Technical College. I am currently majoring in early childhood education and teaching. There are many services that can help you get into college, as well as help you get the accommodations you need to help you succeed. Families, educators, students, policymakers, and advocates all want to see more youth with disabilities go into post-secondary education to find meaningful employment and achieve success in the adult world. So take the survey and do your part.
I'm Tiffany Riegel. I go to Black Hawk Technical College. By completing the survey, you can help shape school programs to prepare students with disabilities for successful adult lives.
So keep your school updated with your info. This is the outro. Back to the intro.
First comes a letter, check your email. Pick up the phone, you got a story to tell. Pick up the phone, gotta let them know what's going on. First comes a letter, check your email. Pick up the phone, you got a story to tell. Pick up the phone, gotta let them know what's going on.
Thinking for the next generation.
All right.
That video never gets old. It's a great video. Please
Yo,
make sure that you
students
use
and
it.
recent graduates.
There.
So next you have any questions, comments, or if you have creative ways that you're successful at getting your surveys done or notifying parents, we'd love to hear from you. Feel free to unmute.
Or words of wisdom to those districts that are unsure if they should do them themselves or if they should have SRI complete them on their behalf. I did have a few people who finished their surveys really early last summer, who then I connected with SRI, and they got hired by them to do surveys because they wanted to do more. They're like, this is like the best summer job out there. And a few of my interviewers have said they take and they'll put a sticky note. So I apologize for my dog. My kids are supposed to be watching her. They would put a picture of like the purchase they want to make with their money that they're going to get from the surveys, and they stick it on their computer so that they could keep that as their incentive to keep going with the surveys.
That's a great idea.
Jenny, are there a lot of downfalls for you doing them on your own? Okay. I want to say about 10 years ago, we had one of our gals do them, and she said, we have to hear back from everyone, and it is just a nightmare. So now she's retired. We have a new director, everything else. And I know last year, the year before, we opted just to not even do it at all because we weren't on the cycle. And we had a lot of other things going on. Like, if I'm going to volunteer to put myself into this situation, am I going to go, oh my God, never again?
No,
I don't think so.
not at all. So we've been doing, so I think this is my 8th year with the grant. Hoping, Brenda, can you not, is that the right? We've been through this 8 years. So it was about eight or 9 years ago that the surveys were initially started by being able to be completed by districts.
Okay, so maybe she did it 8 years ago.
So the survey was a lot longer. We asked a lot more questions that were beyond the required set of questions.
Okay.
So when you actually did the questions, it took almost 15 minutes for the survey. DPI has now requested that we only ask the required questions. So we're down to 10 questions, and it's pretty much when you start talking to the student, if have you gone on to post-secondary ed or any other education or training? Yes or no? Well, if they say yes, then there's some questions you have to ask to get more information. Same thing about competitive employment. Are you working? Have you worked for 90 days within the year you've been out of school? You will spend way more time leaving messages on people's answering machines than you will be actually completing the survey. The survey itself takes about 5 minutes. I did surveys the one year when districts didn't do their own surveys, and I think all my entire family could do my recital of what I said to leave for answering machines is, "Hi, this is Jenny Jacobs, and I'm calling on behalf of such and such school district," because I spent way more time talking and doing that than I did with the actual survey responses. I have never had anybody say, one of the questions that comes up is like, if I'm doing this from home, I don't want anybody to have my phone number. Anybody who's brought that concern up then has talked to me at the end of the survey window and said, I don't even know why I was stressed out about that. We get more worried calls from, our extended warranty and Marriott vacations than we do. Like my phone number, my actual cell phone number is out there everywhere. SRI gives it to everybody. And once in a while I get a parent that needs to just vent. Sometimes it's marriage counseling, that kind of weirdness, but yeah. People who've done them, even directors, whoever's done them they look forward to it. It truly is a really cool process.
Michelle, it was my favorite part of the job for sure. Because I always felt like I was able to get feedback personally as a teacher. And, I always would throw in a question at the end and just say, how are you doing? If you could give us any advice, what was something we couldn't improve on that would have helped with your transition? Or sometimes they'll say, hey, tell Mr. Clark hi, or they'll give a message. And it was really helpful just to see what they were doing.
Okay, thank you.
And you can do it from your deck. So,
And this is Lisa from Pulaski. So we've been doing our own phone calls for, Jenny, you probably know how many years, but I would never want to give it up anymore I would never want St. Norbert to do it because, I don't know, just that connection with the students. You're more in tune to your data then as you're collecting it and kind of keeping track of what students are doing or what you thought they were going to do when they left. So I guess I don't know the size of everyone's district, but I would highly recommend you to do your own phone calls. And it's very, very manageable. And like everyone's been saying, I actually enjoy it and finding out what students are doing.
I would just like to piggyback off that. I've done this survey for 2 different districts. And in one of the districts, we had a massive mix-up with St. Norbert and ended up coming in late in August trying to fix the survey and get it done correctly. So from that experience, I can say that doing it as the district, number one, the people usually, and number 2, you avoid some of those mistakes that happen.
Yeah, and sometimes too, it's the St. Norbert doesn't know if you sent out the letters or not. And so sometimes it turns off families if they say, well, your district sent you a letter, and then the person says, no, they didn't. That can raise some issues. It really, like I said, I really enjoy the team of you who've done these because it's really an amazing process. The summer that I made the calls, I ended up finding that from my prime time to make phone calls was from 4 to 6 at night. Because, I call during my workday here and there and, make a couple calls. But if I sat down from 4 to 6, and of course it's nice out, so I would, I'd take a sticky note and I'd say, I'm going to do 7 calls. We'll see if I have to leave 7 messages, it's 7. So I did about 100 that summer. And you get rolling and all of a sudden you get, 5 successful. I'm like, well, I can do 5 more. It really ended up not being as big of a challenge as I thought. But truly, I think it's better for fewer people to do the surveys. If you only have 1 or 2, you can kind of sit back and put it off and say, oh, I have plenty of time. Even one of my good friends did surveys and she put them off till the end of August. And for her district, that was painful having those conversations. Or if you have staff that say, well, you know what, when school ends in June, I don't work the rest of June, or I take the entire month of July off. If your district graduated students, well, last year's just going to be weird. Let's say you were done, school was done by May 28th. If your district is still in school this year at the beginning of June, you could have staff make those phone calls like that first or second week of June while they're still like on the clock for this year, because it's been a full 365 days since students have been out. So it's really, you can't start, most districts don't go into like mid-June before they exit students. Does that make sense?
Well, Jenny, I haven't been to the training yet, or if I am, I don't know. But like I had a student today that said, hey, do you remember so-and-so? And I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, how's she doing? And my thought process is, how are we going to find this girl that's now in Chicago, Illinois and traveling? But yet if we were still in school, those other kids have the connections that say, hey, do you know so-and-so? I need to connect with them. So I'm thinking if we're still doing it at the end of the school year with these kids, we might be able to reach more kids because the kids' social media.
Right. One district has considered paying their paras because the paras did not get as many hours as they had hoped this school year because of how things have worked. They know that their school year ended before the end of May. They're going to pay the paras to do the surveys the first 2 weeks of June. And they're hoping to then by the second week of June to have them all done. But they said their paras know the students just as well as the teachers. So why not let them gain some extra income and make those calls? And the other true bonus of doing your own is when a family says, you know what, we used to work with that DVR counselor, but we can't remember their name and we don't have their phone number. Most of you have that number somewhere, or you can Google it really quick and say, you know what, here's the number. You know, your case is probably closed now, but you can call them back. That is something truly that as a connection with that district that you can do that St. Norbert can't. So,
you know, and I think that happened way more often than you'd realize. So for whatever reason, when students left school, they weren't ready to engage into whatever their plans were, or they got off their path. But I spend a lot of time in my surveys, maybe reconnecting them to things if they need be. So that's another positive for sure.
The other thing, if St. Norbert, you give them a certain number, like Jenny said, and the number's changed or been disconnected, doing your own survey, you can go back into, you know, Skyward or whatever you use for your system, and maybe they have a younger brother, and you can look up their information, and then you know the new number. I mean, like Shelley said, you're kind of a detective in a way. I mean, it gets to be kind of a challenge, but in a fun way, where you're just trying to make those connections and connecting with teachers. Or I've even sent, you know, messages on Facebook to kids, and that's worked really well too. So I think doing your own is really, I enjoy it because I enjoy those conversations and hearing from parents and kids what they're up to and how things are going. So
Jenny, did I hear you say, so, you know, we were kind of on a mission to try to get to everyone. So there was like one or two that we were not able to connect through the summer. So we held them open a little bit to see maybe when we came back to school, if another teacher knew anything about it or another student. So are you saying, like, say if we only have one or two that we've made quite a few contacts, but like I said, it was more of, we were on a mission to try to find this kid or make a connection. Would you rather have us close it out, and then if there was a number we found or a way to contact that, then you would open it up again?
Yes, Lisa, that really, it helps me out because I take you off the list of like open ones at that point to say, and the numbers can keep changing all the way through September 30th. As of October 1st, then the website gets locked down. So it's not a problem to reopen and to have that successful. But yeah, it does, like your case and Dodie's case, I know that you've been making contacts and you've had surveys open to the end. It's really, a lot of times it's those interviewers who do them all on paper, then they don't enter anything until like all of a sudden they're going to enter all 30 of them at the same time, at, you know, the first week of September. That stresses me out a little bit more. It can stress your director out too if they look and they're like, what's happening? And I will say you are at St. Norbert's mercy when you select them, because they usually go off the list as I give people who are ready in the order that it comes in. So like if I have 30 districts that have all of their information in, I send them that list. They start working on that list. And if it's 3 weeks later that your district, because you didn't get them done on time, finally has information in, you get put farther down on the list. And SRI calls for other states too. They don't just call for the indicator 14 from Wisconsin. So then that sometimes starts stressing out a director because they're like, why aren't they calling? And I'm like, well, because now yours is, there might be other states in between where you get called again. So they get them done. It's nice. Like I had a district in my region who they had 0 out of 4. So I called the director and I said, this isn't cool. Is there any way that your special ed teacher, who was a trained interviewer, can do the training quick and make some calls? And she did. So they ended up with 2 out of 4. So a 50% response rate was much nicer than a 0 response rate.
We had a comment too in the chat from Christy saying that she's the year-round special education secretary for her district, and the annual surveys are just part of her job. That's a big part of your job, though. I bet that takes up time, Christy.
I have a question. So our CTE coordinator just reached out with a list of students who she's trying to get a hold of to finish up her Carl Perkins surveys. And so there were just a handful of students that are going to be on my Indicator 14 surveys. Is there any way that we can piggyback with CTE coordinators for the Carl Perkins surveys and our own than these surveys rather than us both double dipping the same types of questions?
Depends on what the survey window is.
Theirs is already currently open, so.
Right, see, we can't make the calls until June 1st. Because when we report to DPI, who then in return has to send that report to OSUP, we are saying that our contacts, our information is gathered June 1st through September 30th.
So could we use them as a person who knows the student though? Because they already connected with the student or the parent, right? So when we're filling out the survey, one of the choices is someone who knows them.
Correct. So if they have enough information, but then you'd have to have enough to be able to get all the questions answered. The big one that we run into is regarding employment. If you don't know number of hours per week or wage, if we're missing one of those, it doesn't count for competitive employment.
Right. Okay.
So you have to know that it's at least 20 hours and that it's at least at minimum wage. If you have those pieces, definitely. I mean, yes, DPI has made it clear we can use information from others who know that information without having to make a second phone call or reaching out again.
Yeah, because I've used siblings, I've used significant others of students who have been here. Yeah, it's grandpa or friends, brothers, friends, siblings. Yeah, it's a bunch of. I've sent home requests with all sorts of people to try and get a hold of some of these students because either emails or phone numbers are disconnected.
Yeah, and I wasn't familiar with what Carl Perkins actually requests. So if you can make some kind of overlap and you can have that data, go for it. So anyone else with any questions or comments? We thought we were going to have you done really early, but I'm glad that you've stayed on and you've had great things to offer to each other.
Jenny, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Hi, Georgia.
Didn't we at one point mention, forgive me if it was here or CCAT, that we mentioned something about having an incentive for the kids, like saying if they do this survey for them, they would get like a $10 gift card from Subway or something. Is that acceptable?
Other districts have brought that up, that they've done that. That's not been something that I've written up as something I am going to promote on my end. But if that works for your district and you can figure out how to pay for it, go for it.
Well, I mean, you know, when you're talking about maybe 15 surveys at $150 and what that's going to bring in, besides, I mean, over the top to the district, I just think it's peanuts. But I kind of piggyback Shelley when she mentioned connecting with the students and offering resources that maybe they weren't ready for initially, but just reconnecting is awesome. I agree with you totally, Shelley, on that. But I just wanted to bring that and ask about that other piece. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I'm glad that you did, which wasn't something I was going to bring up on my end.
Yeah, we kind of discussed it. People get creative and do different things. I guess it's what works within your district. I did drop the survey link into the chat. If you could, we'd really appreciate it if you could give us some feedback. The code is Jenny 15827.
Sounds like the song.
I know, I was thinking that too. We'll have that in the video going through our head. And then our next in our series is actually on May 4th from 3:30 to 4:30, talking about how have you spent your money and are you ready for the survey to begin? So we'll go over some of those things.
hopefully I can show you the course online and those kind of pieces too. So the cool thing is that most of you are the people who stay on top of all of this information for your district. And so I greatly appreciate the fact that you've been able to share with each other. So we'll see how this goes, but that'll be our last one of the series. And shortly after that, we'll be looking at getting the surveys for 2021 ready to roll. So thank you much.
You know where to get a hold of us if you have any questions that pop up after our presentation. Something comes to you in the middle of the night, you know where to find us.
And I just texted my daughter and I'm like, why aren't you helping me with the dog? And she's like, well, I left to run errands. That's why my dog is going ballistic and I could have just left her in my office.
Oh.
So once you finish, or once you're done, feel free to end the meeting, but please complete the survey. We do look at those results as we're planning our sessions.
Thank you everyone for hopping on today.
Yeah, it was nice seeing a lot of you. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to end recording, Jenny?
Oh, yes.